My name is Manuel Richardson, and at 32 years old, I never expected to hear from my father again. Not after he called my tattoo career filthy and disowned me 7 years ago. Yet there I was, staring at my phone as his voice asked for $230,000 to save the family furniture business. The same business my brother James had apparently run into the ground. The same fortune I was cut out of. I felt a storm of emotions collide inside me. If you are watching this while getting inked, comment where you are from. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to choose between your passion and family expectations. Growing up in Hartford, Connecticut, was all about appearances. Our family name was plastered on billboards across New England, and Richardson Fine Furniture was a household name for anyone with money to spend on handcrafted dining sets or custom bedroom collections. 3 generations had built a reputation for excellence, craftsmanship, and tradition. And I was supposed to be the 4th. My father, Thomas Richardson, was 58 when he called me asking for money. But in my childhood memories, he stands tall and imposing, always in a tailored suit, always with that stern expression that could turn a room cold. He commanded respect wherever he went. The community admired him as a businessman who maintained quality while expanding the family legacy. Customers would shake his hand and thank him for pieces that became family heirlooms. Business partners would laugh at his jokes even when they were not funny. Everyone wanted to be in Thomas Richardson's good graces. Everyone except his own family, who walked on eggshells around him. My mother Alina, 55 and perpetually anxious, had mastered the art of agreeing with my father. I remember watching her transform from an animated, joyful woman, when alone with me, to a quiet, nodding presence whenever he entered the room. She came from old money too, and the merger of their families through marriage had been more business arrangement than love story. She never contradicted my father publicly or privately. Her role was clear in maintaining the Richardson image. And then there was my younger brother James, now 29. From the day he was born, my father saw in him what he wanted to see. The perfect heir. James had that natural charm that made people trust him instantly, even when they should not have. He was groomed from childhood to take over the business. Where I was encouraged to observe board meetings, James was invited to participate. Where I received books on business theory for my birthday, James received personalized business cards. The golden child who could do no wrong. Our family mansion sat on 3 acres in the wealthiest part of Hartford. A colonial-style home with 6 bedrooms, a formal dining room that seated 20, and a study where my father would retreat each evening with a glass of scotch and the company reports. We never wanted for anything material. Private schools, summer homes, European vacations, cars on our 16th birthdays. But emotional warmth was a different kind of currency, one that was scarce in the Richardson household. The pressure to follow the family tradition was never explicitly stated because it did not need to be. It was assumed, like the air we breathed. The Richardson men built furniture empires. Period. My artistic talents were initially encouraged as extracurriculars that would make my college applications more rounded. When I showed early promise in drawing and painting, my mother would smile secretly and my father would nod with detached approval. That talent would serve you well in designing new furniture lines someday, my father once said when I showed him a particularly detailed sketch. It was the closest thing to praise I ever received from him regarding my art. But it was my father's obsession with legacy and respectability that truly defined our family dynamic. He would lecture us over dinner about the responsibility of carrying the Richardson name. He would point to the portraits of my grandfather and great-grandfather that hung in the main hallway, reminding us of their sacrifices to build what we had. The business was not just a business. It was our identity, our purpose, our obligation. And I felt that obligation crushing me a little more each year as I grew older. I did what was expected. I attended the prestigious Wharton School of Business, following exactly in my father's footsteps. I called home weekly with updates on my business courses, my networking connections, my internship prospects. What I did not mention were the art classes I was secretly taking across campus, paying for them with the part-time job I had taken specifically for that purpose. It was during my sophomore year that everything changed. My roommate Lucas, a free-spirited marketing major with sleeve tattoos, noticed me sketching one evening. He looked over my shoulder at the detailed portrait I was working on and whistled. "Man, you should not be wasting that talent on quarterly reports. You ever thought about tattooing?" I laughed it off at first. Me, a tattoo artist. My father would have a coronary. But the seed was planted, and I could not stop thinking about it. About creating art that lived and breathed on canvas that mattered. About making something permanent and meaningful. Something that was nothing like furniture. The first time I walked into Black Rose Tattoo Studio in downtown Philadelphia, I felt like I was crossing an invisible boundary. The space was nothing like I had imagined from movies or television. It was clean, professional, with art covering every wall and the subtle hum of tattoo machines creating a strangely comforting white noise. The smell of antiseptic mixed with incense created an atmosphere that felt almost sacred. That was where I met Damon Wright, a 40-something tattoo veteran with 20 years of experience and more awards than he had wall space to display. He was adding detail to an intricate Japanese-style dragon on a client's back when I entered, but he glanced up briefly, nodded at me to wait, and continued his work with the focus of a surgeon. I watched him for nearly an hour, mesmerized by the precision of his movements, the way he brought that dragon to life one line at a time. When he finished and his client left, he finally addressed me. "What can I do for you, business boy?" he asked, eyeing my Wharton sweatshirt with amusement. I showed him my portfolio, hands slightly shaking. He flipped through it silently, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up with intensity that made me nervous. "You are in the wrong school, kid." That was the beginning of my double life. By day, I was the perfect business student, acing my finance classes and participating in investment club meetings. By evening, I was Damon's unofficial apprentice, learning the fundamentals of tattoo artistry after hours. I would sneak away from campus 3 times a week, telling roommates I was attending study groups or going on dates. The feeling of freedom that washed over me each time I stepped into Black Rose was indescribable. There, I was not a Richardson. I was just Manuel, the art guy with potential. No expectations except to learn and improve. No legacy to uphold, except the one I was creating with each new design. Over the next 2 years, I developed a unique style that combined fine art techniques with modern tattoo approaches. I studied anatomy, practiced shading for countless hours, learned about ink composition and needle configurations. Damon was a demanding mentor who never sugar-coated his critiques. "This line is weak. Do it again. Your black is not black enough. Build more layers. That proportion is off by millimeters, but millimeters matter when it's on someone's body forever." I absorbed everything, pushing myself harder than I ever had for any business course. And all the while, I maintained my facade at Wharton, graduating with honors while my parents beamed with pride from the audience, unaware that my real education had happened in a tattoo studio across town. The internal struggle between duty and passion became more intense as graduation approached. I had job offers from prestigious firms, including one at a consulting company where my father had connections. The path was laid out for me to take my place in the Richardson legacy, eventually returning to the family business after gaining outside experience. But then came Antonio, my first major client who trusted me with a full back piece commemorating his journey as an immigrant. The tattoo took 5 sessions to complete, a detailed scene of his hometown in Mexico transitioning into the Philadelphia skyline, with symbols of his journey woven throughout. When I finished, Antonio stood before the mirror in silence, tears streaming down his face. "You did not just put art on my skin," he said finally. "You put my story there." A week later, Antonio posted pictures online. They went viral within the tattoo community. My Instagram account, created under the artist name Manuel Inc. rather than Richardson, gained thousands of followers overnight. Comments poured in asking about bookings, techniques, my inspiration. The recognition was intoxicating not because of the numbers, but because for the first time, I was being valued for something I had created entirely on my own. No family name to open doors. No father's connections to smooth the way. Just my vision, my hands, my work. As graduation week approached, I received a message from Erica, a young woman battling stage 3 breast cancer. She wanted a tattoo to reclaim her body after a double mastectomy. She had seen Antonio's piece and felt I was the only artist who could help her. The day I spent creating a flowing, botanical design that incorporated her surgical scars, rather than hiding them, was the day I knew with absolute certainty that I could never return to the path my father had chosen for me. As Erica looked at her completed tattoo, her expression of wonder and reclaimed confidence made every future confrontation with my family seem worthwhile. I am going to tell them, I told Damon that evening. After graduation, I am going to be a tattoo artist, whatever they say. He nodded, not surprised. Most people live their whole lives never finding what lights them up. You found it. Would be a waste to walk away from that. So I made my decision. I would use the business degree to help me build my own studio someday, but I would not be joining the ranks of suited executives or taking my place at Richardson Furniture. I was going to be an artist, creating work that mattered on canvas that lived and breathed. All I had to do was tell my family. The Richardson family tradition after graduation was dinner at Vincenzo's, the most exclusive restaurant in Hartford. Private room, 7-course meal, champagne toast. I sat through 4 courses with mounting anxiety, rehearsing my prepared speech in my head while barely tasting the expertly prepared food. My mother commented twice on how quiet I was. My father talked business, as always, outlining the management training program he had arranged for me at the company. When the main course arrived, a perfectly seared duck breast that I would normally have savored, I put down my fork and cleared my throat. I have something to tell you all, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. My father paused mid-sentence, wine glass halfway to his lips. My mother tensed immediately, attuned to the slightest disruption in family harmony. James looked up with mild curiosity. I am not going to join the management program, I continued. I have found my calling, and it is not in furniture. A heavy silence settled over the table. My father set down his glass carefully, too carefully. And what calling is that? He asked, his tone deceptively light. I took a deep breath. I am going to open my own tattoo studio. I have been apprenticing for the past 2 years, and I already have clients and recognition in the field. The silence that followed was so absolute, I could hear the muffled conversations from the main dining room despite the closed door. My father stared at me as if I had suddenly started speaking an alien language. My mother's hand went to her pearls, a nervous habit she had whenever distressed. It was James who broke the silence with a short, incredulous laugh. You cannot be serious, Manuel. Tattoos? Like a biker gang member. I am very serious, I replied, maintaining eye contact with my father, whose face had begun to redden. I showed him pictures of my work on my phone. I am good at this. I have been published in tattoo magazines already. And this is what I want to do with my life. My father's explosion was sudden and violent. His fist came down on the table, rattling the fine china and sending droplets of wine splashing onto the white tablecloth. Absolutely not. He thundered, drawing concerned glances from the waiter who had just entered with dessert trays. The poor man quickly retreated, closing the door behind him. Tattoos are filthy, degrading marks for criminals and deviants, my father continued, his voice shaking with rage. No Richardson has ever or will ever be associated with such gutter art. Dad, these are not biker tattoos from the 70s, I tried to explain. This is art. Legitimate, meaningful art that helps people express themselves and... My father cut me off. Do you have any idea what this would do to our family's reputation? Our business relationships? He gestured wildly, his face contorted. I did not spend thousands on your education for you to throw it all away on this disgusting trend. I looked to my mother for support, but she sat with downcast eyes, silent tears tracking mascara down her cheeks. Her fingers worked nervously at her napkin, folding and refolding it into smaller squares. "Eleanor, talk some sense into your son," my father demanded. She raised her eyes briefly to mine, and I saw something there. Regret. Understanding. But whatever it was not strong enough to make her speak against my father. "Manuel, perhaps you could pursue this as a hobby," she suggested weakly. "Your father's business needs you." James watched the entire exchange with poorly concealed satisfaction. The golden child, witnessing the family disappointment, confirming his status. He even had the audacity to adopt a concerned expression. "Manny, you know the business has always been meant for both of us. Dad has been planning for us to run it together. Don't throw away your birthright on some trend." "My birthright," I repeated slowly. "I never asked for that birthright. I never wanted it." My father stood suddenly, tossing his napkin onto his plate. "Then perhaps you don't deserve any of what being a Richardson offers." The ultimatum came next, delivered with cold precision. "You have a choice to make, Manuel. You join the family business as planned, or you are no longer part of this family. No access to family funds. No inheritance. No support. If you choose this filthy career, you are on your own." I stood as well, surprising myself with my calmness. Then I guess I am on my own. 3 days later, I sat in the family lawyer's office, signing paperwork that officially removed me from the family trust. Mr. Harrington, who had known me since childhood, kept glancing at me with confusion and something like pity as I signed document after document. "Are you certain about this, Manuel?" he asked quietly while my father was speaking with his secretary outside. "This is a substantial inheritance you are forfeiting." "I am certain about my choice," I replied, signing the final page. When my father returned, he did not look at me. He simply collected the documents, thanked Mr. Harrington, and walked out. That was the last time I would see him for 7 years. I spent that night in my childhood bedroom, knowing it would be the last time. My mother came in briefly, her eyes red from crying. "I wish you would reconsider," she whispered, not quite meeting my eyes. "Mom, I have never been sure of anything the way I am sure about this," I told her. "Why can't he see that?" "Your father sees the world in very specific ways," she said carefully. "He always has." "And you?" I asked. "How do you see it?" She touched my cheek gently. "I see my son who deserves to be happy. But I also see my husband who I cannot go against." She withdrew her hand. "Please keep in touch with me at least." But I knew even that would be limited under my father's watch. The next morning, I packed 2 suitcases and left the Richardson mansion. I crashed on Luca's couch for a week while I processed the emotional devastation of being disowned. There were moments I second-guessed my decision, nights I woke up in cold sweats wondering if I had made a catastrophic mistake. But my small circle of friends rallied around me. Luca's never once suggested I had made the wrong choice. Damon offered me a guest room until I found my footing. And Antonio, my first major client, connected me with his cousin who had an apartment for rent in Brooklyn. A month after being disowned, I moved to New York with determination burning through the hurt. I would build something on my own terms. Something my father would be forced to recognize, even if he never approved. I would prove that following my passion was not a mistake. New York City was both terrifying and exhilarating. I arrived with my savings from summer internships, my tattoo equipment, and a determination that burned brighter than the Times Square billboards. What I did not have was the safety net of family money that had always been there my entire life. Brooklyn welcomed me with its gritty authenticity, so different from the manicured lawns of Hartford. My apartment was a 4th-floor walk-up with questionable plumbing and neighbors who played music at all hours. But it was mine, paid for with money I had earned, not inherited. The New York tattoo scene was brutally competitive. Established artists had waiting lists months long. New studios opened and closed within a year. Clients had their pick of incredible talent from around the world. And here I was, a business school graduate with 2 years of unofficial apprenticeship, trying to carve out a space for myself. My first studio space was barely larger than a closet, a sublease arrangement in the back of a barber shop in Williamsburg. The owner, Hector, took a chance on me after seeing my portfolio. "You got something different in your work, man. Not like these other artists copying each other. But I can only give you 3 months. You bring in clients, you can stay longer." Those first 3 months were a hustle unlike anything I had experienced. I worked 16-hour days, splitting my time between creating new portfolio pieces, building a website using the marketing skills from my business degree, and networking at every art event I could find. I lived on ramen and coffee, pouring every spare dollar back into better equipment and advertising. Word of mouth became my most valuable marketing tool. Each client became an ambassador for my work. I focused on creating not just tattoos, but experiences. I took time to truly listen to what people wanted to express through their body art. Cancer survivors, people marking major life transitions, memorial pieces for lost loved ones. I specialized in transforming painful experiences into beautiful art. 4 months in, I tattooed Jordan, a journalist for a popular culture magazine. He was so impressed with both the tattoo and my story of leaving behind a family fortune for my passion that he featured me in an article titled New Ink. Artists Redefining Tattoo Culture. The exposure brought a flood of new clients and follows on social media. By my second year in New York, I had saved enough to rent a small storefront in a rapidly gentrifying area of Brooklyn. I painted the walls myself, built custom furniture from reclaimed wood, and installed a sound system that played everything from classical to hip-hop. I named it Inked Legacy Studio, a subtle nod to the family legacy I had rejected and the new one I was creating. What made my studio different was the approach. I treated tattoos as fine art commissions rather than items from a flash sheet on the wall. Each piece began with an in-depth consultation about the meaning and motivation behind the tattoo. I created custom designs that often incorporated elements of traditional painting techniques, architectural precision, and emotional symbolism. As my client list grew, so did my reputation. Actors, musicians, and influencers began requesting appointments. A famous director flew me to Los Angeles to create a commemorative piece after his Oscar win. A rock star displayed my work on stage during a sold-out Madison Square Garden show. Tattoo magazines that I had once studied as an apprentice now featured my work on their covers. I was invited to international tattoo conventions as a guest artist. My Instagram following crossed the 500,000 mark. Aspiring artists asked to apprentice with me, and I carefully selected 2 who showed exceptional promise and dedication. With success came expansion. 3 years after opening Inked Legacy, I moved the studio to a converted warehouse space 3 times the size of the original location. I hired 4 additional artists who shared my vision, but brought their own unique styles. We became known as the studio that turned down more clients than we accepted, not out of elitism, but because we only took projects where we could create something truly meaningful. Financial success beyond my expectations followed. I was earning more than I would have in any entry-level position at my father's company. I bought my apartment building and renovated it, providing affordable housing for artists in a city where rents kept climbing. I started a scholarship fund for art students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Through it all, I received occasional updates about my family from my cousin Sarah, who had always been kind to me even after the disowning. She would text me news clippings about Richardson Furniture winning design awards or expanding to new markets. Photos from charity galas where my parents posed with James, now officially the heir apparent and company vice president. According to Sarah, my father would boast about James' business acumen at industry events, while pointedly changing the subject if anyone asked about me. My name became something not mentioned in the Richardson household. I existed in a strange limbo state, alive but not acknowledged. For my 30th birthday, I sent my mother a card with my phone number, in case she ever wanted to reach out directly rather than through Sarah. I never received a response. I wondered sometimes if my father intercepted it, or if she had simply chosen the comfort of silence over the complication of divided loyalty. I told myself it did not matter anymore. I had built a new life, surrounded myself with people who valued me for who I was rather than the family name I carried. I had proven myself on my own terms. The hole left by family rejection had scarred over, even if it had never fully healed. Then came the call that would force me to confront everything I thought I had moved beyond. The first hint that something was wrong with the family business came from an unexpected source. I was scrolling through industry news during a break between clients when I spotted the headline. Richardson Furniture cancels fall collection launch amid restructuring. I stared at my phone, surprised by the twist of concern I felt. Richardson always launched their fall collection with a major event that attracted interior designers and high-end retailers from across the country. Canceling it was unprecedented. Before I could think too much about it, my cousin Sarah called. We had maintained a cautious relationship over the years, occasional text messages and holiday greetings, nothing that would get back to my father and cause problems for her. "Manuel, have you been following what is happening with the family business?" She asked without preamble. "I just saw something about a canceled launch," I admitted. "Is it serious?" There was a pause before she continued. "It's bad. Really bad. James has been making some questionable decisions for years now, but Uncle Thomas kept covering for him. Now it's all coming to a head." Over the next 20 minutes, Sarah laid out a picture of mismanagement and poor judgment that shocked me despite my complicated feelings about the family business. According to her, James had pursued aggressive expansion into international markets without proper research or infrastructure. He had shifted production of some furniture lines to overseas factories, compromising the handcrafted quality that had been the Richardson trademark for generations. Customer complaints had risen dramatically as delivery times lengthened and quality declined. But the worst part, Manuel, Sarah confided, her voice dropping, is that James has developed some serious personal problems. Gambling debts, substance abuse issues. He started small, taking money from petty cash, but now there are rumors about missing investment funds. Uncle Thomas is in complete denial. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this information. The golden child, the perfect heir, had apparently been anything but perfect. Part of me felt a vindictive satisfaction that made me immediately ashamed. This was still my family, however estranged we might be. Over the following weeks, I found myself checking business news more frequently. Reports about Richardson Furniture became increasingly concerning. A major layoff of 30% of their workforce. The closure of their flagship showroom in Boston. Rumors of suppliers demanding payment up front due to credit concerns. Then came an investigative piece in the Business Journal detailing allegations of financial impropriety. According to unnamed sources within the company, James Richardson had diverted company funds to cover personal debts and luxury purchases. The article included photos of James leaving an exclusive rehab facility, looking haggard and avoiding cameras. I tried calling my mother after that article, worried about how she was handling the public scandal. The number had been changed. I sent an email that bounced back. The walls around the family had grown higher, even as the foundations were crumbling. 6 months after Sarah's initial call, the business press was openly discussing whether Richardson Furniture would survive the year. Their stock had plummeted. Industry analysts pointed to a perfect storm of bad management, changing market conditions, and damaged reputation. Sarah called again, this time with even more disturbing news. "Aunt Alina had a minor heart attack last week," she said quietly. "The stress of everything. She is okay, recovering at home, but Uncle Thomas is. Well, he's not handling anything well. He fired James finally, but the damage is done. There are rumors they might have to declare bankruptcy if they can't secure emergency funding." That was when I felt the first inkling that my peaceful existence, separate from the Richardson drama, might be coming to an end. A sinking feeling that somehow, someday soon, I would be pulled back into the vortex I had escaped. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I was finishing a consultation with a client when my phone rang with a number I did not recognize, but with the Hartford area code. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something made me excuse myself and take the call. Manuel Richardson speaking, I answered, stepping into the back office. There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath, and then a voice I had not heard in 7 years. Manuel, this is your father. Those 4 words sent me back in time, to that restaurant, to that lawyer's office, to that moment of painful separation. My hand tightened on the phone. What do you want? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. We need to talk, he replied, his tone lacking the commanding authority I remembered. Business matters. Important ones. As if we had spoken last week instead of 7 years ago. As if he had not cut me out of his life with surgical precision. As if he had any right to call me for business matters after declaring my chosen career filthy. I almost hung up. Almost told him he had the wrong number. Instead, I heard myself agreeing to call him back after my last appointment of the day. That evening, alone in my apartment with a glass of whiskey I did not really want, I made the call that would bring my past and present into direct collision. Hello, Father, I said when he answered, the formal address feeling strange on my tongue. I had not called him Dad in many years, even in my thoughts. Manuel, he replied, his voice carrying the slight strain I had noticed earlier. Thank you for calling back. What followed was possibly the most awkward conversation of my life. He asked about the weather in New York. I gave monosyllabic answers. He mentioned a new restaurant in Hartford. I remained silent. Finally, after nearly 5 minutes of this painful small talk, he cleared his throat. I assume you have heard about the situation with the company, he said. I have heard some things, I confirmed. I understand James is no longer with the business. My father made a sound, something between a scoff and a sigh. James made mistakes. Serious ones that have put us in a difficult position. The understatement was almost comical. According to the business press, James had nearly destroyed a century-old company in less than 5 years. I am sorry to hear that, I said, not knowing what else to offer. But I am not sure what this has to do with me. Another pause, longer this time. When my father spoke again, his voice had taken on the tone I recognized from business negotiations, carefully modulated to project confidence despite difficult circumstances. We need an infusion of capital. Immediately. The banks are not willing to extend additional credit given our current situation. We need $230,000 to meet obligations to suppliers and make payroll this month. Without it, I will have no choice but to file for Chapter 11. I nearly dropped my phone. Not because of the amount, which was significant but not shocking given the size of the company. What stunned me was that he was asking me, the son he had disowned, for financial help. You want me to give you money? I clarified, wondering if I had somehow misunderstood. Not give, he corrected quickly. Invest. It would be a proper business transaction with appropriate documentation. You would receive equity in return. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process the surreal nature of this conversation. My father, who had called my career choice filthy and degrading, was now asking me to use the proceeds from that very career to bail out the family business. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want me to invest money I earned through my tattoo career into Richardson furniture? If he caught the irony, he gave no indication. I am aware that you have been successful in your chosen field, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. Sarah has kept us somewhat informed. Of course she had. I made a mental note to ask her about that later. This would be an opportunity to reconnect with your heritage, he continued. Perhaps even take a more active role in the company moving forward. Your business education would still be valuable to us. Us, not him personally. Us, the collective Richardson entity that had expelled me years ago. What about James? I asked, curious about my brother's absence from this conversation. My father's tone hardened. James is no longer involved with the company in any capacity. His actions have caused enough damage. And Mom, how is she? Your mother is recovering, he said stiffly. Her health has been affected by these developments. She would be pleased to know you are helping the family. There it was. The emotional manipulation I should have expected. My mother's health as leverage. The implication that refusing would hurt her further. Classic Thomas Richardson negotiation tactics. I need time to think about this, I said finally. This is not a decision I can make during one phone call. We don't have much time, Manuel. A week at most before decisions become irreversible. I will call you in 3 days, I promised, already knowing I needed to talk this through with someone objective. After ending the call, I sat in silence for nearly an hour, emotions churning like a storm. Anger at the audacity of the request. Bitter satisfaction at the reversal of fortunes. Worry for my mother. Confusion about my own conflicted feelings. The next morning, I canceled my appointments and went to see Damon, my old mentor who had relocated to New York 2 years earlier and now worked at a prestigious studio in Manhattan. He does not deserve your money, Damon said bluntly after I explained the situation. Not after how he treated you. But it's not just about him, I argued. It's the family legacy, the employees who would lose their jobs, my mother. Damon shook his head. The family legacy did not matter when he cut you out. The employees did not matter when he chose your brother despite the red flags. And your mother, as sad as it is, made her choice too. He looked at me intently. The question is not what they deserve. It's what you need for your own peace of mind. I consulted with a business advisor next, someone with no emotional stake in my decision. She reviewed the public information about Richardson Furniture's financial situation. Based on these reports, $230,000 would be a temporary bandage at best, she told me frankly. The structural issues run much deeper. Without major reorganization and new management, they will likely be in the same position 6 months from now, just with your money gone too. I spent the next day researching everything I could find about the company's current state. What I discovered was worse than my father had indicated. They had lost major accounts. Quality complaints had tripled. The company pension fund was reportedly underfunded. It would take far more than my father was asking for to truly save Richardson Furniture. By the time the 3 days had passed, I had made my decision. Not from a place of vengeance or spite, but from clarity about who I was now versus who I had been when I left Hartford 7 years ago. I called my father and arranged to meet in person, on neutral ground. If I was going to do this, I wanted to see his face. We met at an upscale hotel in Midtown Manhattan, a location I suggested precisely because it was my territory now, not his. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a tailored suit that projected success on my terms. My tattoos were visible at my wrists and collar, a deliberate choice rather than something to conceal. My father arrived exactly on time, as he always had for every appointment in his life. He looked older, the past 7 years and recent troubles evident in new lines on his face, and a slight stoop to his shoulders that had not been there before. For a moment, seeing him as a man rather than the towering figure of my childhood, I felt a surprising flash of compassion. He extended his hand formally, and I shook it, noting the slight surprise in his eyes when he felt the firmness of my grip. We took seats in the quiet corner of the hotel restaurant I had reserved. You look well, he said, his eyes taking in my appearance with an assessment I could not quite read. Thank you. I replied simply. A server appeared with water and took our orders. My father asked for scotch neat. I ordered sparkling water. Another reversal I noted silently. Once the server departed, my father pulled a folder from his briefcase. I have prepared the investment documents, he said, sliding them across the table. Our attorney has structured this as a preferred equity position with priority distribution rights. I left the folder untouched. I want to be clear about something before we discuss any paperwork. This is not going to be a silent transaction. I have questions that need honest answers. My father's expression tightened, but he nodded curtly. That's reasonable. Did you ever, at any point in the past 7 years, reconsider your position about my career choice? I asked. He blinked, clearly not expecting this opening question. This is hardly relevant to the business matter at hand. It's completely relevant to me, I replied calmly. Did you? My father stared at his scotch for a long moment before answering. I acknowledge that you achieved a certain level of success in your field. That was unexpected. But you still consider it beneath a Richardson, I pressed. He did not deny it. The Richardson name was built on creating heirlooms that last generations, not decorating bodies. I nodded, having expected nothing else. During these 7 years, did you ever consider reaching out, not for money, but simply to reconnect with your son? For the first time, my father looked genuinely uncomfortable. This was not why I asked to meet. No, I agreed. You asked to meet because you need money. Money I earned through work you considered filthy. I let that sink in for a moment before continuing. I want you to understand something clearly. I am not the same person who left Hartford 7 years ago. I built something on my own terms, without the Richardson name opening doors for me. I am proud of what I have created. As you should be, he conceded stiffly. Your business acumen clearly served you well, which is why I thought you might see the opportunity here. I laughed, not unkindly, but with genuine amazement at his perspective. You still do not see it, do you? This was never about business acumen. This was about passion, about creating something meaningful, about connecting with people through art that matters to them. Something the Richardson business used to stand for before it became about expansion and appearances. My father's jaw tightened. Are you suggesting I lost sight of the company's values? I am stating it plainly, I replied. And based on my research, that disconnect from core values is a much bigger problem than your immediate cash flow issues. I opened my own folder and placed several documents on the table. Industry analyses, customer complaint reports, internal memos that had somehow leaked to business publications. You do not need $230,000, I said. You need a complete restructuring, a return to fundamentals, and probably closer to $2 million to truly save the company. Most importantly, you need new leadership with a vision beyond survival. My father stared at the documents, his expression unreadable. Then you are refusing to help. I looked at him steadily. I am declining to throw good money after bad. But I am offering something else. I pulled out a business card and placed it on top of the documents. The contact information for a business restructuring specialist who had helped several heritage brands reinvent themselves. I will pay for his initial consultation, I said. He is the best in the business for companies with strong histories, but current management problems. I will also offer my own time as a consultant on rebranding and reconnecting with core values. But I will not give you money that will not solve the actual problems. My father's face flushed with anger. So this is your revenge? Watching the family business fail while offering meaningless gestures. This is not revenge, I said quietly. This is me offering what will actually help rather than what you think you need. You taught me that distinction yourself, ironically. Sometimes what a business needs is not what its leader wants to hear. He stood abruptly. I did not come here to be lectured by my son about the business I built. You built but then lost sight of, I corrected. And you did not come here for a lecture. You came for a bailout without addressing the real issues. I stood as well, maintaining eye contact. What you are experiencing now are the consequences of choices made over years, not a temporary setback that cash will fix. My father gathered his documents with shaking hands. Your mother will be disappointed. I hope someday you will stop using her as a shield, I replied. She deserves better. He paused at that, something flashing in his eyes that might have been recognition or merely more anger. Without another word, he turned and walked away. I watched him go, feeling not the satisfaction I might once have expected, but a strange peace. I had stood my ground without cruelty. I had offered help without compromising my values. I had faced my past without being controlled by it. 2 months later, I read that Richardson Furniture had filed for bankruptcy protection. My father had not called again, had not taken me up on my offer of consultation services. Pride, I suspected, had won out over practicality. The Richardson way. What did surprise me was an email that arrived a week after the bankruptcy announcement. From my mother, sent from a new personal account rather than her old family email. "Manuel," she wrote, "I want you to know that I understand your decision. Perhaps better than you might think. I have taken steps to establish some independence for myself during this difficult time. Thomas and I are separated now. It may not be permanent, but it is necessary for me to find my own voice again. I would very much like to see you when you feel ready. With love, Mom." I read that email a dozen times, tears blurring my vision. We arranged to meet the following month in New York, a tentative first step toward rebuilding a relationship outside the shadow of family obligation. That same week, I signed the lease on a second inked legacy location, this one with a specific mission. In addition to regular clients, we would provide training and employment opportunities for young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. I established a scholarship program that would cover art education costs for 3 promising students each year. The grand opening drew coverage from local media, including a feature on how successful tattoo studios were creating economic opportunities in communities often overlooked by traditional businesses. I thought about sending the article to my father, but decided against it. Some lessons have to be learned through experience, not instruction. As I look back now on the journey from that disastrous family dinner 7 years ago to today, I see how necessary every step was. The rejection that forced me to prove myself on my own terms. The struggle that taught me resilience no business school could provide. The success that came from authentic passion rather than obligation. Most importantly, I learned that true legacy is not about names on buildings or trust funds. It is about the impact we have on the people whose lives we touch. Every time a client looks in the mirror and sees their story beautifully rendered on their skin, every time a young artist discovers their potential in our studio, I am building a legacy that matters. I also learned that forgiveness is not about excusing past wrongs. It is about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. I have forgiven my father, not for his benefit but for my own peace. Whether he ever recognizes what was lost between us is his journey, not mine. So if you are watching this and standing at your own crossroads between expectation and passion, between the path laid out for you and the one calling to your heart, I hope my story gives you courage. The road less traveled is harder in many ways, but the view belongs entirely to you. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your true calling? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and join our community of people creating authentic lives on their own terms. Like this video if you believe in standing firm in your values, even when it is difficult. And share it with someone who might need to hear that choosing their passion is not selfish, but necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the strength to write your own, whatever that may be.